Welcome to the Athena Wellness Podcast, the show that invites you to take a seat around the community fire and listen to stories that inspire. I'm your host, Kathy Robinson, author, coach, and founder of Athena Wellness, a company that's dedicated to supporting you on your journey to live more wholeheartedly. Hello, and welcome to episode 42. Thanks so much for joining me for this shortened Wellness Wednesday episode, a little midweek boost to help keep your warrior vibe high. In episode 41, we explored how to stay well in times of change. Today, I'd like to give you some insight in how I prepare for the inevitable sea changes that occur from time to time. In particular, some of the tools, principles, and practices that I find most helpful. So I invite you to sit back, take a nice long breath to ground yourself in presence, and let's get started. So what is a sea change? Sea change is defined as a substantial change in perspective on a particular issue. I think of sea change as a time when you feel completely upended, where life as you've known it has changed considerably. Even though by definition, sea change can affect the broader community, that word feels more personal to me, whereas a term like paradigm shift is more of a change that affects society at large. For example, a recent sea change for me was leaving corporate life for an entrepreneurial one. When I think of paradigm shift, what comes to mind is telephones. Remember wired home phones and phone booths and calling cards? Moving to cellular and later smartphones was definitely a paradigm shift. An example of when a sea change is both personal and affects the broader community is the pandemic. We were individually impacted, and society at large had to make massive shifts. And I found it incredibly helpful to have a structure in place that supported me as we underwent such radical change. That structure came from a wellness book I wrote a while back. The methodology was not only applicable, but it was effective in guiding me through the strangeness of 2020. I relied on the tools and the practices for sure, but the most impactful for me were the principles. The word principle can have a very strict feeling, but that's not how I see it. It's defined as broad philosophical statements that provide a solid foundation and serve as a guide for current actions and future decisions. For me, they act as guardrails, focusing me so I can direct my efforts no matter the circumstance. And that's the key. They provide structure, but they're flexible enough to bend when the waves of change start approaching, and also when I emerge on the other end as a changed person. It's been my experience that when I found principles that worked for me, there was a resonance, a knowingness that I had guidance to move forward, to make positive changes, and to experience growth. You can choose any principles that work for you. I have 5, and they are 1. Self-compassion, caring for my own well-being in the form of self-acceptance and nurturing support. 2. Intention, setting direction and connecting emotionally to what I desire. In other words, my heart-based why. 3. Consistency, showing up for myself and staying committed and engaged, especially during challenging times. 4. Growth mindset, having an optimistic and curious outlook and seeing challenges as opportunities. And 5. Accountability, checking in on progress and celebrating wins, and compassionately adjusting where I need to. Here's how it's worked for me. The principles are the core that fuel me. I also have tools such as apps, my calendar, and spreadsheets, and they help keep me on track. And then I have practices, such as journaling, writing each weekday in virtual community, and taking my walks. They help me create good habits and they increase my long-term well-being. This framework, that's outlined in more detail in the Athena Principles book, has served as the map for my journey toward increased vitality, well-being, and living in a more wholehearted manner. Here's what I learned as I was preparing for this episode. Having worked with these principles, tools, and practices for decades now, it's only in hindsight that I see they act as a beacon as well. They've become a source of light that helps me connect to my own source of inner light and inspiration. It's these principles that allow me to do what I do in the world, whether it's my work or my personal life, and I never really made that connection before. I used to think of this methodology as a way of getting things done and staying well, but it's deeper than that. It's about interconnection, nurturing, recharging, and growing in community. I've come to learn the secret of preparing for a sea change is to have an underlying principled structure that supports you while greeting each day, welcoming whatever it may bring. I'd like to leave you with a quote from author Stephen Covey, who said, "There are 3 constants in life: change, choice, and principles." May you live in accordance with principles that resonate with you and allow them to support you as you navigate the sea changes of your life and experience self-reliance, growth, and discovery. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know there are many ways you can spend your time. Thank you for choosing to spend it with me. Until our paths cross again, be kind to yourself and show your warrior spirit some love. If you know anyone who could benefit from today's episode, please pass it on. And many thanks for supporting the show by subscribing and leaving a review. It means a lot and it helps others find their way to our circle. And if you'd like access to the show notes, have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode, or would like a transcript of this episode, visit www.athenawellness.com/podcast. Until next time, be well.